Hi, welcome to my video on exponent of 0. Exponent of 0. B to the 0 equals 1. B is not equal to 0. Note, if B equals 0, then 0 to the 0 is not defined. So again, B cannot be. And to explain that, let's look at it. If I take 0 and raise it to the 0 power, I get an error. So we're not allowed to have a base of 0 when you do exponents, because 0 to the 0 is undefined. Okay, 2 cubed times 2 to the 0. Well, one way is that there's a rule that says that when you multiply like exponential with like basis, you add your exponents. And 3 plus 0 is 3, and 2 cubed gives you 8 because it's 2 times 2 times 2. So that's an 8. Okay, that means if that's an 8, if we look at this one again, 2 cubed is 8 times 2 to the 0 to give you 8. That means that 8 times 1 equals 8. That means that 2 to the 0 must be 1. 2 to the 0 must be 1. Just a little proof or proving that 2 to the 0, 1. Another one that we can do is take 2 power button 0 and see what we get. 1. Okay, so 2 to the 0 is 1. Any number to the 0 power is 1, except 0. You can't raise 0 to the 0. So let's work out some of these now. 7 to the 0, 1. 9 to the 0, 1. Negative, notice the negative 2 is in a bracket to the 0 power is 1. 1/3 in a bracket to the 0 power is 1. Notice we have 5 bracket 4 to the 0. Notice the 4 is to the 0 power, so that's 5 bracket 1. 4 to the 0 is 1. 5 times 1 is 5. Notice the 4 is to the 0, not the 5. The 5 is to the 1 power. And in bed math, we have to work out 7 plus 2 is, 5 plus 2 is 7. 7 to the 0 is 1. G, negative 3 times negative 8 to the 0. Negative 3 and negative 8 to the 0 is a 1. Notice again, the negative 8 is to the 0 power, not the negative 3. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Now we have powers. 3 to the 0 is 1, plus 6 to the 0 is 1. 1 plus 1 gives us 2. I, we have the negative of negative 6 to the 0 power. Notice you, from bit mass, if you think about B, PEMDAS, is that you have to work out your power first. So negative 6 to the 0 power is 1. Negative of 1 is negative 1. Notice you have to work your power first. You cannot do the negative of negative 6 to get 6. If you did that, if you did the negative first, the negative of a negative is a positive 6 to the 0 power, you would have got 1. So that's wrong. You have to do your power first. J, x to the 0 is 1. Notice that the 0 is not with the B. The A is a 1 and the 4 is a 1. So what happens is that I have 4A. The B is to the 0 power, so that's a 1. So that gives me 1 times the number is 4A. Notice in L, the A is to the 0 power, so that's 4. A to 0 is 1. B has a 1 power, 4 has a 1 power. So that's 1 times that is 4B. Notice in M, 4 bracket AB to the 0 power. Notice the A and the B is to the 0 power, so that's a 1. Very important to watch what the power is to. So notice I have it all, 4AB all to 0 power, so that's 1. Again, notice AB only 1. All of it is 1. Over here is just the A is 1. Right here the B is 1. Be careful. And when we work out these, we do the power first. Negative of And a negative 1 to an odd power is negative 1. Negative of, we have negative 3 to the 0 power, so that's 1. So we have our, by bed mass, we have our, there's no brackets to work out, but we have to work out our powers. So the negative of a negative is a positive, so that's a positive 1. That's a negative of a positive, so that's negative 1. And 1 divided by 1 is 1, and odd, when you divide unlike signs, you get a negative. Notice in P, you have the negative of 7 to the 0. Note over here, you have the this is negative 7 raised to the 0 power. So that's a 1. This is the negative of 7 to the 0. So that's the negative of 1. Notice the 7 is with the 0 power, not the negative. So note the difference. This is raised to the 0 power. But here only the 7 is raised to the 0. So that's the negative of. No matter what this is, that's going to be a negative number. And R, remind you again, I have a negative. So it's a negative 8 to the 0 power. So that's 1. So that ends up to be negative 1. Very important. Watch out what you're doing. Just be careful. What's raised to the power. And that's true for any exponent, not only 0. Now we have some practice. Pause the video, work out all these answers, and then play it back to see if you're right. Here we go. 6 to the 0 is 1. Y to the 0 is 1. Negative 9 all to the 0 is 1. 4 over 7 to the 0 is 1. 6 subtract 2 is 4. The 0 power is 1. 6 to the 0 is 1. 2 to the 0 is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. Notice the 0 is with the 11, so it's a negative 8. 11 to the 0 power is 1, so that's a negative 8. Notice the 0 is with the D, not with the 3, so D to the 0 is 1, so that's a 3. And a little bit more, so we have an 8 on the bottom, but on the top we got 4 to the 0, which is 1, plus 2 to the 0, which is 1. And when we add them, notice I'm simplifying the bottom and the top first, and then I'll divide after. So now I have the top simplified to 2. The bottom is an 8, and because it's a fraction, 2 into 2 goes once, 2 into 8 goes 4. Notice I have the negative of, so that means it's going to be negative of 1. That's going to be a negative number. And right here, that's a negative 6, all to the 1, all to the 0, so you get a 1. I'll try that on a calculator just to see what happens. Just watch the calculator here. Turn this on, clear it. If I put a negative 6 in bracket and raise it to the 0 power, I'll get a 1. If I put negative 6 and raise that to the 0 power, notice there's no bracket on the 6, so that's the negative of 6 to the 0. Notice, be careful. Be careful. Very, very important to note the distinction. So this is the negative of, so the negative 6 to the 0 power is 1. So that's the negative of 1, which is negative 1. The y is to the 0 power, 7x. Y to the 0 is 1. 1 times any number is that number. And 0 is with the x, so you got a 7. 0 to the x is 1, and a y. Multiply, I get 7y. Notice that the 0 is with the 7x. So the 7x, that's a 1 times y, which is 1y. That's understood to be multiplication in between there. 7, bracket, xy to the 0 power is 1, so that's a 7. Notice the 7 is to the 0, so that's a 1 and xy, so it's just xy. And 18, I have do the powers first. I have a negative of. Negative 1 to an even power is 1. And negative 5 to the 0 power is a 1. So I get 1 over 1 is 1. Negative divided by positive is negative. 19, I have 3 squared. And I have, that's an 8 to the 0 power. So it's a 1. And that's 9 times 1. It gives you 9. Notice I square this first to get a 9, then I multiply by PEMDAS. P-E-M-D-A-S. So I worked out, you got to work with your power before you multiply. So, and we have 9, subtract. So a negative 6 to the 0 power is 1. So 9 subtract 1 is easy. That makes it an 8. Notice 4x over y to the 0 power is a 1. No matter what you have to the 0 power is 1. And again, remind you, 0 to the 0 is a no-no. It does not exist as an error. You can't have 0 as a base to a 0 power. And no matter what you have, no matter what this is in here, provided it is not a 0. If it's a 0, then it got to be, can't do it. So I have to work it out. If that's not 0, then the answer is 1. Let's work out the inside. So on the inside, I got to do a P-E-M-D, PEMDAS. I got to do inside the brackets. So inside the brackets, I have to. Inside of here, I got a power, so I have to go 4 squared is 16. So the inside is being done. Now, I got my power done. I have to multiply next. 3 into 24 goes 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 minus 16 is a 0. Oh, 0 to the 0 is, as they say, undefined. Can't do it. It's a no-no. Does not exist. So that brings us to the end. If this was any other number in here, if this came out to be any other number, then you would have a 1. But when it's a 0 here, 0 to 0 is undefined. Just check with your calculator. If you like my video, then click on the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, and write a comment if you wish. And you may also visit my math website, www.mathfullyexplained.com. And there you'll have information about me, my degrees and teaching experience. Section on videos has the strategies you're going to use to help you learn your math. And the section on content gives you the topics or the units that I have on the YouTube channel. Also has the number of videos on each topic. And the black font is topics that's online right now. And the red font is the topics that I'll have there in the near future. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.